I have the privilege of introducing this phenomenal speaker that we have with us today. So let me tell you a little bit about Laura Rendón. She is nationally recognized as an education theorist, activist, and researcher who specializes in college preparation, persistence, and graduation of low-income, first-generation students. So I know that makes all your hearts sing. A native of Laredo, Texas, Rendón's passion is assisting students who, like her, grew up in poverty with hopes and dreams, but not knowing how to realize them. Rendón is credited with developing the theory of validation, which colleges and researchers have employed as a framework for working with and affirming low-income students. She is a teaching and learning philosopher and thought leader. She developed a pedagogic framework called Sente Pensante, Sensing Thinking Pedagogy, that emphasizes intellectual, social, emotional, and spiritual student development along with social activism. Rendón is an active scholar whose research has been published in key education research journals. She is also the author of Sente Pensante, Sensing Thinking Pedagogy, Educating for Wholeness, Social Justice, and Liberation. Moreover, she is co-editor of books and monographs, including Transforming the First Year of College for Students of Color, Educating a New Majority, Introduction to American Higher Education, and Racial and Ethnic Diversity in Higher Education, an ASHE reader. She is co-director of the Center for Research and Policy in Education at the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Texas in San Antonio, which engages in research that informs the education community about critical factors that affect the academic success of key student groups. She is also one of the founders and former board chair of the National Council for Community and Education Partnerships in Washington, D.C., focused on providing access to college for low-income students. She has served on the Board of Trustees for Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado, and she's also designed and coordinated the yearly Latina Student Success Institute for the American Association of Hispanics in Higher Education, the nation's premier scholarly organization focusing on higher education issues impacting Latinos. As a leader in the field of college access and achievement, Rendón's research has been featured in the Chronicle of Higher Education and the PBS documentary, The College Track. Rendón is a frequent speaker at colleges and universities throughout the nation on topics related to improving persistence and completion. And as you know, I was so taken with her work that I was inspired in fall of 2017 to launch our district-wide Equity for Excellence community. And the number of individuals from Central Services and Foothill and from De Anza has just been so encouraging to see the adoption and application of Laura's theory. And you may recall that I had the intention of supporting 3 of our colleagues to go to NCORE. The applications were so strong I had to support 5. So they are doing great work, and again, it is thanks to your inspiration, Laura. We could not be more happy to have you here. So welcome to Foothill College.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me put this down.
I've done that.
You haven't.
Buenos dias. Good morning. How are y'all doing today? Good. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I had a great dinner with folks last night, and this is a phenomenal district. So it's my pleasure to be here and to share what I've learned about student success with you. I know there's about, the possibility of 20-some thousand others that are being linked to this talk. And so hello out there, wherever you are. So let me begin by sharing a little bit about what brings me into this work of student success. I know that community colleges play a central role in the lives of particularly low-income, first-generation students, the first in their families to go to college. I am one of these students. I went to my first community college in Laredo, Laredo Community College, then transferred to San Antonio College, where I earned an Associate of Arts degree back in 1968. Went on from there to earn a BA from the University of Houston, and came back to Laredo to teach. I've been a middle school teacher for 5 years. Went on to my master's degree at A&M in Kingsville, Texas, and on to the big leagues, the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, to earn a doctorate. But the issue here is not just that trajectory of educational achievement, but how does a student who grows up in poverty, who has no one in his or her family to assist them to make a decision even as to what college to choose or what major or where to go for advice, how does that student go from the barrio to the academy? How does someone like me get from Laredo Community College to the University of Michigan to earn a doctorate? How does someone like me get the opportunity to have this privilege to speak to people like you, very well-educated people, and to share what I've learned? This has been a phenomenal journey for me. And your students are embarking on a similar phenomenal journey. And we want to get them to those places where they can say, hey, I've reached my goal. I made my family proud. I've made my community proud. And so this is the house that I spent a lot of my years growing up. It was my grandmother's home, and my mother bought it for $5,000 back in the 60s. It's still there. We don't live there anymore, but every time I go to Laredo, I drive by there just to anchor me as to where I came from. And as you can see, we didn't have, very, very much. So my life's work is to help students who grow up like me. And some of them don't even have homes, as you well know. Some people are in cars. And I've heard about those things as I speak to people across the nation. My life's work is about helping those students, the most vulnerable among us, to have something they can hold on to have a dream realized. And so I know that all of you share this passion, and so I'm in some ways speaking, to the choir. But I also know that sometimes you need a little help. You want to learn from experts like me about what do I do? ¿Cómo le hago? How do I figure this out? And so I boiled it down to 3 things that I can share with you, 3 messages that in my 30-some years of being in education that I've learned can help you to do a better job with your students. And I'm going to elaborate on these 3 things. The first is to engage faculty and staff in actively validating students. And I know that so many of you here, and thanks to the Chancellor's Initiative, have actually been doing this. Secondly is to work with an asset-based as opposed to deficit-based student success framework. And thirdly, to employ pedagogic innovations that result in high-impact practices and deep learning experiences, such as senti pensante, sensing thinking pedagogy. So let me go into each of these 3 messages that I have for you today. So let's begin with the importance of validation. There's a report that came out in 2014. It's called Great Jobs, Great Lives. And it's a study of more than 30,000 college graduates across the United States. And I read that report, and I read some of their key findings. And they asked these 30,000 college graduates, out of everything that you experienced in college, and again, they've already graduated, but out of everything, what made the most difference for you in your job and in your well-being? And so here were some of actually these were the top 2 findings. If the graduates had a professor who cared about them as a person, who made them excited about learning and encouraged them to pursue their dreams, their odds of being engaged at work more than doubled, as did their odds of thriving in their well-being. This is validation right here. Okay? And these are 30,000 college graduates saying that out of everything that they got out of college, this was their number one thing that made a difference for them. So it's not just me talking about validation. You've got other, there's actually extensive research now on the theory of validation. The second thing, which is very important, is that if the graduates had an internship or a job where they were able to apply what they were learning in the classroom, were actively involved in extracurricular activities and organizations, and worked on projects that took a semester or more to complete, their odds of being engaged at work also doubled. So you've got here this whole notion of applied learning, of experiential learning, okay? So validation, experiential learning, these deep learning experiences that take a semester or more to complete, those are the things that matter most to students. So in 1994, we did a study. Validation theory comes out of a study of 2- and 4-year college students. And we asked them, who is making a difference for you right now, especially the first year of college? And they talked about the people that were meaningful for them in their lives. Not only faculty and staff, but people outside of the college environment. These out-of-class experiences with their kids who said, "Mommy, I'm so proud of you. You know, you've gotten, you know, you're going to college." The spouse who was there cooking for that student. I mean, there's validation can occur both in and out of college. It's an affirming, confirming process initiated by in and out-of-class agents that fosters academic and personal development. And in that article where I define validation theory, I talk about two forms of validation, academic and interpersonal. And academic validation is mainly when that occurs in class, so it can occur outside of class. But it's faculty setting up the classroom where students can see themselves in what they're learning, where students begin to realize, I can do this. Because you see, like me, many students come to college thinking that they can't be successful. They think that maybe college is not for them because they don't have anybody at home that they can look up to as role models for the college experience. And I remember when I was speaking to students at Rio Salado Community College in Phoenix, there was this woman, she was a little older than the rest of her peers in that group, happened to be a white woman who had several kids. And I said to her, you know, you look really excited about being here. You know, what's made the difference for you? And she goes, my communications instructor. And I said, tell me about that. She said, my communications instructor became like an idol to me. We were asked to give a speech and to record it. And we were watching the speech in class. And I was looking at the monitor with me giving that speech, and I said to myself, look at you, look at you. You know, you're good, you know, you can do this. And consciously or unconsciously, what that faculty member had done was to set up the classroom so that students early on can witness themselves as being able to do college-level work. And that's an example of academic validation. Interpersonal validation, a much more informal kind of thing, but believe it or not, just calling students by name makes a huge difference. You know, and also I heard a student say, I couldn't believe this, and she said, you know, I was in my mathematics class, and the instructor, the math instructor, called us all by our social security number. And she said it would have been much easier to call us by our name than by our social security number. And I was like, wow. I thought those days were long gone. But apparently some of that is still going on. That's invalidation, by the way. You don't want to do that. All right, so I think you get the gist of this. So Here's what I've learned that students would like for you to know and for me to know. They want us to know, hey, I matter. I'm important. I'm a valuable member of this community. They want us to know that we believe that they can learn. They say, you know that I have many things to learn, but you also recognize that I have strengths. And I'm going to talk about those strengths in a few minutes. You will take care to validate my need to know that that what I am learning can be applied in real life experiences. You value and validate my voice, my culture, and my life experiences. You take care to include assignments that allow me to grow and to make a difference in my community and my world. You will design a curriculum that reflects who I am. These are some examples of what students need to be validated, to be affirmed, to help them believe that they matter, that they can learn, that what they bring is as important as what more privileged students bring to the college environment. And I know that staff are also involved in validation. In fact, they play a critical role. Sometimes they're at the front line. They're the people who greet students. They're the people who guide students, who direct them. And so staff members play a very, very important role in validation. And what students want staff to know is when I visit your campus, you treat me with an authentic ethic of care, compassion, and respect. Really mean what you say. Call me by my name. Get to know me. You understand that sometimes I may not even know what questions to ask or how to get involved in college because I'm a first-generation student. You will do all you can to assist me and direct me to others when you can't. You will treat me not just like a student, but as a human being. I think the essence of validation is caring, support, and being there for another human being. And we all need in our lives affirmation. You know, people say, well, isn't that coddling students? Isn't that making them weak? I look at students in the Puente project. In Texas, we now have a similar project called CTN, and now it's called Ascender. And when I see the students in those projects, I don't see weak students. They've been validated. They're actually now believing that they can do this, and that they're doing this because people care about them and because they feel that someone will be there to support them when they need assistance. So here's some best practices of validation for faculty. Affirming the value of personal voice in the classroom. Engaging students in study groups. It's in these study groups that I've learned that students really support and validate each other by sharing assignments, by giving feedback, by just, being there for each other and sharing their experiences and, everything that they've learned and how they've grown, etc. These are best practices for advisors, counselors, and staff. Build a relationship with students. Ask questions about their life and the struggles that they've been through. Praise their success. Emphasize the importance of education for their families. Don't assume all students know how to get involved. For a first-generation student, it's not that they don't want to get involved. It's just they don't know how to. They don't know what questions to ask because they don't have a familiarity with what college is all about. So sometimes we have to do that outreach ourselves first until they are grounded, until they feel centered. And then, the idea is to get them to, be on their own, but not everybody's starting at the same starting line. And so some are going to need more help than others, particularly that first semester of college. And then whenever possible, affirm students of being capable of doing college-level work. So validation, the importance of validation is the first message I have. Let me move on to my second message, which is about working with an AcidBased student success framework. There's a narrative about students who are low income, who live in poverty, and about low income communities. That people say, oh, those students will never succeed. Those students have so many problems, it's too overwhelming. Those students can't learn. And that becomes the default narrative when we talk about low-income students. I'm here to tell you that we need to change that. We need to change that because that's not affirming. And actually, it's not helping. It hasn't helped in the past 30 years. So there's no reason to expect that things are going to change if we continue with that mentality today. We need to now move to an asset-based framework of working with students. Can you imagine if Berkeley talked about students in a deficit way? You know, I don't hear them talking about how these students are dumb and they can't learn or any of that, or Harvard or Yale. Why is it that it's only when we talk about low-income students that, well, we can say those things about them? But there's lots going on in low-income communities as well. And we think that maybe there's nothing going on, but they do backbreaking work. You know, they set up shops, they support each other through the churches, etc. There's lots going on that is very, very positive that we need more research to highlight the strengths of low-income communities and the strengths of students. And so I've done some research along those lines that I want to share with you as we move forward in thinking with an asset-based framework. There was a study that we did at UTSA a couple of years ago. And one of the things that we wanted to learn was the strengths that Latinos employ to become survivors and to move past obstacles. In other words, how do students like me, how do we survive? How do we move past these obstacles? So many of us have had adversities in our lives. And we can't just say that because we had an adversity that we'll never succeed. There's a really good book out called Supernormal by Meg Jay, who's a psychologist at the University of Virginia. And she calls students like me and other individuals that have been very successful, who come from backgrounds who have gone through adversities but still succeed, supernormal. And it's not just about perseverance, although that's an important strength that you need to have. And certainly I persevered, I had the grit, I had all of that. But there are other strengths that need to be identified that helped people like me to succeed. And so we wanted to identify what are those strengths. We interviewed students in a focus group setting, 47 of them, and out of those 47, we interviewed 6 one-on-one. What did we learn? To guide us in looking at the strengths of students, we used Tara Yoso's community cultural wealth model. And what Yoso indicates is that in low-income communities, there are strengths. There is what she calls cultural wealth: family, social, navigational, resistant, linguistic, and aspirational capital. So we took this framework and we listened to the transcripts and read them, and we said, well, are these students identifying some of this wealth as they talk about their experiences and how they did it? And sure enough, they were, and we even identified more strengths that Yoso did not include. Certainly, they had high aspirations for themselves. I remember talking to this young man who grew up poor in South Texas, and his dream is to be like Julian Castro, who was the mayor of San Antonio and HUD secretary and was touted as a possible vice presidential candidate with Hillary Clinton. And Julian has a twin brother, his name is Joaquin, and he's in the legislature. So he and his twin brother, he has a twin brother, they wanted to be like the Castro brothers. That was their dream. That was their aspiration. So that's just an example of the kinds of stories that these students would have. And that's a great strength, because if you have a dream, if you have a goal, like I had a goal, that can drive you to continue to do what you want to do in life. Certainly language, employing two or more languages. Family. This is the family modeling strength and determination. I remember when I was young, and my parents separated when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And my mother worked odd jobs as a waitress, picking crops, cleaning homes, whatever she could do. And that modeling stayed with me, her work ethic, her grit, her determination, her willingness to keep moving despite the adversities that she faced. Social capital, they formed peer networks and study groups where they validated each other. Huge asset, navigational capital. They learned to operate in these liminal spaces, these in-between spaces where they have one foot in college and another foot in their culture. And that middle space of transition, what Gloria Saldúa calls Nepantla, is something that they learn to navigate. They learn to move around different contexts. The world of their culture, the world of work, the world of college, the world of their peers. They learn to figure out how things worked in college, often with very little assistance. And that certainly happened to me. Often with very little assistance, they figured things out. Resistant capital, they resisted stereotypes and combated and overcame microaggressions. And these microaggressions are known in the literature as these kind of like jabs, that are hurtful. I'll talk about my own experience, and this was as a doctoral student. This can happen anywhere at the University of Michigan, where this woman told me, Laura, you're pretty smart. I have to tell you that when I first met you, I thought you were kind of dumb. A professor, again at Michigan, I turned in my paper, who said to me, oh, this is a very well-written paper. Do you write this way all the time? So you can understand the subtext of that. And I said, yes, I write that way all the time. And just between you and me, that's one of my assets. Thank God that I'm lousy in math, but I'm good at writing. So anyways, microaggressions, where these students, put up with things like, why do you speak with an accent? Why are you cooking that food that smells weird? Why do you speak Spanish? All of those were microaggressions. And overcoming hardships such as poverty and lack of guidance and resources. Another super strength, ganas, what Jaime Escalante in LA in Stand and Deliver called ganas. You gotta want this. You need the passion to do this. Perseverance, inner strength. And then giving back, a huge asset that I'm discovering for students. What this means is that the students wanted to earn a degree not just to hang it up on the wall because it looks nice, but because they wanted to make this world a better place to live. They wanted to be role models for others. They wanted to help their communities. It's just like with me. My work is to help you and others, to move forward in helping students to succeed. I want to see more students to succeed. That's what drives me. And so my degree wasn't just to hang on the wall either. It was just, I knew that I had a mission, a purpose in life, and that's what I wanted to do. These students have that, giving back. Spirituality and faith. Some students came to the interviews with religious bracelets and crosses, and they talked about when things got tough, they would turn to God. Others simply talked about compassion and gratitude. And then another strength that we call pluriversal. This is able to hold multiple and competing systems of meaning intention. I was undocumented, and now I'm documented. I was single, I'm married. I speak English, I speak Spanish. It has to do with sort of an intersectional approach to our identities. That we are more than just one identity. We are more than one language at times. We have a composite of things that makes us who we are, and we use them all to act with wholeness in life. So the same thing was found for African American students in this study that was done in 2013. And again, some of the similar assets are coming out for African American students. This is my new work now. My new book came out this year, The Latino Student Guide to STEM Careers. And one of the things that we're doing, we're almost done with an article that we're going to put out. We're in chapter 8 of this book. There are some testimonials, essays that were written by Latinos and Latinas who actually graduated with a STEM degree. And as you know, that's quite an achievement because there's a lot of underrepresentation, particularly in STEM. So we wanted to figure out, how did they do it? How'd they earn this STEM degree? And so we're analyzing those essays. There's 14 of them. But here are some of the assets. In addition to everything I've mentioned, here are some of the new assets that we found for STEM students. Again, giving back. I want to use, I mean, science is to help the world. Climate change, drought, water quality. Science is to help the world. It's not just to be in a research lab. That's important. But what are you going to do with all that? They have a social justice consciousness, that STEM is connected to eliminating inequality, promoting fairness and equity, and advancing humanity. And curiosity. Even at an early age, these students were the why kid of the family. Those of you who are in STEM probably can relate to this. I mean, they wanted to know how things work. So here's some examples of these assets. Diana Del Angel says, in the end, I hope to give back to my community and take my learned experiences back to South Texas. And Marina Suarez, she says, the opportunity to give back to the community that I grew up in has been one of the most rewarding parts of my job. Here's an example of social justice consciousness. Ricardo Martinez, who's finishing a doctorate now at Iowa State, says, with my research, I'm establishing my own theory of how people learn to make math more equitable. As a Latino, I am proud to contribute to the rich STEM history that is associated with the Latinx culture. And Elva Elisa Niebla says, for me, global change, including climate change, is the biggest threat to the planet. In fact, the most rewarding aspect of my work has been knowing that I contributed to the progress of humankind. So here are other examples of contemplative practices that foster deep learning. People have asked, where did you get that? And I was working at Cal State Long Beach, and a student from UCLA came to my office, and she knew I was working on this book. And she said, you need to read Eduardo Galeano's book, The Book of Embraces, and I think you'll find the word there. And I turned to this page called The Celebration of the Marriage of Heart and Mind. Why does one write if not to put one's pieces together? From the moment that we enter school or church, education chops us into pieces. It teaches us to divorce soul from body and mind from heart. The fishermen of the Colombian coast must be learned doctors of ethics and morality, for they invented the term senti pensante. Senti pensante. Sensing, thinking, to define a language that speaks the truth. And so there was my word, senti pensante, the term that speaks the truth as what we can do with our own teaching and learning approaches in the classroom. It is a culturally validating pedagogy that includes pensar, y sentir. Thinking, feeling, activated in the middle by a diverse ecology of contemplative practices. So moving forward, we have a very important task. There's so many students that are first generation that are knocking on your door. So many students like me who so long ago just had this dream of moving forward and turning my life around. And know that there's so many others in your classrooms that have that same dream. Our job is to help those students to realize those dreams. Thank you for the work that you do. It's a pleasure to be here. Chancellor, muchas gracias. Good luck with everything that you do. Thank you.